All right, what's going on, everybody? So I know that a lot of you guys have probably already heard about this. Yesterday, it was announced that Sony and Disney, their Spider-Man deal, is all over. Sony and Disney, they couldn't reach an agreement, and so Spider-Man is leaving the MCU. And today, I want to go ahead and read Sony's official press statement, and then also talk about a bit of the fan backlash and just my thoughts on the whole situation and everything. So without dragging this on, without dragging the intro on here, let's go ahead and get into Sony's official statement. I got this from IGN. Much of today's news about Spider-Man has mischaracterized recent discussions about Kevin Feige's involvement in the franchise, Sony said to THR. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision not to have him continue as a lead producer of our next live-action Spider-Man film. Sony then further explained that Feige may have had too much on his plate to focus on IP that they do not own. We hope this might change in the future, but understand that the many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all their newly added Marvel properties, do not allow time for him to work on IP that they do not own, says the statement. Kevin is terrific, and we are grateful for his help and guidance, and appreciate the path he has helped us on, which we will continue. So, some reports suggested that studio chiefs Tom Rothman at Sony and Alan Horn at Disney could not agree on a financial agreement to continue to collaborate, although Sony statement does not include all that. So here's my thoughts on the whole situation. So a few things. First of all, yesterday it came out, and this is kind of related. It came out that Kevin Feige he had some involvement in Venom. So for those of you guys who might be thinking that Sony is just trying to save face, they're trying to look good in this statement. I think they really do. I think they really do appreciate Kevin Feige because he didn't have to go out of his way and have any involvement in the Venom movie. And we know that movie, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it did sell. Well, not sell, but it did make money. It made a lot of money, a ton of money. And apparently, Sony and Disney, they had such a great relationship up until this point that they allowed Kevin Feige to just come in and kind of help out on Venom. Something that he didn't even have to help out on because Venom isn't even connected to the MCU. So it's definitely not one of those situations where they're just trying to save face. And you could argue that, obviously Disney hasn't, from my knowledge, Disney hasn't released their official statement. It's only been Sony. And you could argue that, okay, Sony, again, they're trying to save face. Because I'm seeing a lot of people kind of blaming Sony for this. And I don't want to say that these people are misinformed because obviously this story it has been just, developing yesterday as we got the news. But there's people out there saying that there's fans out there saying that they're going to boycott the next Spider-Man game from Insomniac over this whole situation with Spider-Man leaving the MCU. And I kind of get where y'all head is at because it was announced this week, I believe on Monday, was it Monday, Tuesday, that Sony now owns Insomniac. So I kind of get what y'all kind of thinking, but Sony Pictures, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know a lot about this studio stuff, but Sony Pictures and Sony Entertainment, the games division and the movie division, those are two separate things. And then also you got to take into consideration that Insomniac, they don't have nothing to do with this. Don't punish Insomniac. Don't punish the child for something the parent did. The parent being Sony in this situation, and the child being Insomniac, obviously. Like, don't punish the child because of what, Sony is doing, because Insomniac has nothing to do with this. But I just thought that I'd kind of bring up the backlash because there are people disappointed by this. And as far as how I feel about this whole situation with Spider-Man leaving the MCU, so a few things that we got to talk about. So first thing, it needs to be noted that Tom Holland, he's still gonna be Spider-Man for the next 2 movies because they still had that, the contract and everything. He was still contracted for 2 movies. So this next Spider-Man movie, it's still gonna have Tom Holland as Spider-Man. But I have read articles that kind of talk about how this is going to affect Tom Holland's Spider-Man going forward, because obviously with Kevin Feige and the MCU not being a part of Spider-Man anymore, that means that they can't talk about Spider-Man going into space. Like, they can't reference certain things in these next 2 movies. Like, they can't reference Iron Man anymore. They can't reference Iron Man, Tony Stark, who was this big father figure to Peter. So it's like you can't reference that. So what y'all gonna do? Y'all finally gonna, and maybe this will be a good thing because maybe they can now touch on Uncle Ben, which they've kind of shafted. So maybe they can kind of touch on Uncle Ben finally now. But it's like Iron Man has been such a big part of Peter's life. I mean, the second movie, well, really the first 2 movies. I mean, a lot of Iron Man's influence, and especially this last movie. I mean, Iron Man has played such a big role in Peter's life. It's like, how do you not reference that? And then also Peter going to space. Peter fighting against Thanos. Like, they can't reference all of that. And then you got, I'm about to say Birdman. Michael Keaton's character, Vulture. You got his character who has ties to Iron Man, with what they did with his character in the first movie, Homecoming. And then in the second movie, you have ties to Iron Man again with Quentin Beck, Mysterio, with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. So it's like, going forward, even if they brought Mysterio back or they brought Vulture back, it's like, well, you can't reference anything that has to do with Iron Man, so that's kind of taking away a little bit from their characters, I would think, potentially. And with how the last Spider-Man movie ended, with J. Jonah Jameson coming back, the original, J.K. Simmons, you gotta wonder if they could even still use J.K. Simmons, but maybe they can. But it's certain things that they won't be able to reference and certain things that they won't be able to do anymore as a result of Sony and Disney breaking up their collaboration. And so that kind of sucks. And I kind of get why people are a bit disappointed in this, because, with Marvel finally getting the X-Men back, and then the whole thing with the Netflix deal basically being over, you got Daredevil, you got Luke Cage. You got all these characters that Spider-Man could have potentially interacted with. And it would have been cool to see, because I've seen people wanting Spider-Man and Deadpool, or Spider-Man and Daredevil. And Spider-Man and Daredevil, Matt Murdock, he could have played a cool role. He could have played a crucial role in what's happening with Spider-Man now. If you guys saw that cliffhanger ending, that stinger in the last Spider-Man movie. So it's kind of disappointing. It's very disappointing for some people. And as far as I go, as far as my opinion on the thing, so I'm kind of disappointed about it. Like, I'm sad about it, and at the same time, I'm happy about it. Because if you guys haven't checked out my review of the last Spider-Man movie, and a few of the things that I've talked about in regards to just Spider-Man as a whole, a part of me is happy about this situation, because with the last Iron Man movie and then really kind of like the first one with Homecoming, it's like they tried to make Peter into Iron Man Jr. And I know there's some people that might disagree with that, but I felt like Spider-Man, they wouldn't let him do his own thing, especially in the last movie. Like, they had the whole world questioning who's gonna be the next Iron Man, and Peter feeling like he needs to fill in for Tony and everything. It kind of felt like they were going a different route that I didn't really care too much for, in regards to just him trying to kind of walk in Tony's footsteps. And then they made, in Homecoming, they made his suit more technology based, but they kind of pulled back on that a little bit, by the end of Far From Home. But they also had a lot of things in Far From Home, like when Peter is putting together his new suit, and they got AC/DC, they got that song playing that Tony likes while he's, making his suit and everything. Like, they really played up that relationship between Iron Man and Spider-Man, and that's why the fact that they can't reference that, the fact that they just gotta act like all the MCU stuff didn't exist going forward, that's gonna kind of hurt the storytelling, I can imagine. But like I said, part of me sad about it, part of me, kind of happy about it, because that means Spider-Man can be his own man. That means Spider-Man can be his own superhero. That means Spider-Man can focus on Spider-Man and do Spider-Man things. Because I felt like, even with the villain in the last movie, I felt like, and I said this in my review, but basically with Quentin Beck, man, I didn't like the fact that once again we had a villain that had ties with Iron Man. And one thing that always makes these Spider-Man movies so good, especially like the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, is because Spider-Man, like with Doc Ock, like he had a close relationship with Peter, and they did a little bit of that with Quentin Beck, but obviously Quentin Beck was deceiving him. He was definitely deceiving him the whole time, but so it kind of took away from Peter as a character a few of the things that they did with the MCU version of Spider-Man. But at least with these next two movies, like I said, we get Tom Holland as Spider-Man still. And so if they are sticking to a 2-year schedule, because, Homecoming came out 2017, and then 2019, obviously this year, was Far From Home. So the next movie should be in, 2021, and then the other movie should be in 2023. Let's say 2024 will be the last Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. Let's just give them an extra year, right, to kind of figure things out. So let's say 2024 will be the last Spider-Man movie, and then 2021 will be the next one, right? So we also got to talk about the fact that, they're going to reboot it again. And this is something I'm not, I don't want to say that I'm necessarily not all for. I mean, this will be the fourth? No, it won't be the fourth reboot. It will be the third reboot, right? Yeah, it will be the third reboot, because we obviously had the Andrew Garfield ones that were terrible, and then obviously this one that we're doing now, this current one. But with this third reboot, honestly, and I'm not quite sure as to if they have to reboot, if that's like part of the contract. Because for those of you guys who don't know, something that this statement didn't talk about, and something that I read yesterday, was that Disney, and this is also something that I needed to bring up too. So with Disney, because again, like I said earlier, there's some people that are misunderstanding the situation, because it's not Sony at fault here, or at least from what I've read and from what I'm reading here, it wasn't Sony's fault. It was Disney. And I as much flack as we can kind of give Sony Pictures, Sony's movies division, because they don't make a lot of great movies a lot of the times, but I gotta give it to Sony on this one for sticking up for themselves, because from what I read, basically the whole deal fell apart because the exec at Disney was like, hey, we want an increase. We want I read something like 45%, or maybe they wanted something a little bit higher. They wanted like a 50-50 deal, something like that. But basically they wanted more money. And Disney wanted more money. Sony was like, hold on. Y'all don't even own. And I can imagine that Sony exec, Alan Horn, just being like, hold on, y'all don't even own the IP. Y'all want money for something that y'all don't own. Yes, Marvel created Spider-Man, but they don't own the IP anymore. Legally, they don't own it. So it's like y'all want more money for something that y'all don't own. Like, we own Spider-Man, we own Venom, we own all that stuff. No, we're not gonna give y'all more money. I mean, thanks for all y'all did. You know, thanks to Kevin Feige, but y'all can walk. Y'all can walk. And I get it because look at how much Disney owns. I think Disney has gotten so big that maybe their execs probably walked out there. They're probably, Tom Rothman, he probably walked out of the conference or whatever, out of the Sony offices or wherever it took place. Like, hold on, who does Sony think they are, right? He probably walked out the office like Denzel off of Training Day. You know that scene where he talks about putting cases on everybody? He probably walked out the office like that, because, like, Sony owns everything now. Like, and that kind of goes back to that whole boycotting Sony situation. Like, what y'all gonna do now? What y'all gonna do now? Are y'all gonna boycott Disney? Because apparently it's Disney's fault. So what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna boycott Disney now? Like, hold on. So y'all gonna stop watching ESPN? Y'all gonna stop using Hulu? Like, Disney owns so much. Even if y'all said that y'all were gonna not support Disney over this whole situation, excuse me. Even if y'all said that y'all weren't gonna support Disney no more, it's like y'all gonna end up supporting them somehow because they own so much. I mean, it's like I said, it's a very disappointing situation. And even Jeremy Renner, the actor that plays Hawkeye, he's all for Tom Holland, sticking around the MCU and everything. And obviously, he has nothing to benefit. He don't have anything to benefit from Spider-Man sticking around. I mean, it's not even like he had that much interaction. I don't even, to kind of think about it, Hawkeye really didn't have much of any interaction with Peter. I mean, not really. But, yeah, obviously Jeremy Renner and Tom Holland, they've all been in movies. They've all been in movies together, obviously with the Infinity War and Endgame. But even he's like, okay, let this man stick around. Come on, Disney, do the right thing, right? So this whole situation kind of sucks because I know there's a lot of people that, even with this recent reboot, it's like there's a lot of people that's like, oh my God, not another reboot. Oh, we gotta see Uncle Ben die again, and thankfully they didn't do that. But it's like, it's one of those situations where people don't want to see that again. So with this reboot that we know is inevitable, because we know a few things that Sony has in the works, right? We know that they have the next Venom movie, which honestly, that next Venom movie might be really good. I know there's some people that didn't really like the first movie. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world. But Andy Serkis is directing. And they got other talent on there now. Like, it's probably going to be a really good movie, especially in comparison to the first one. They got that Morbius movie with Jared Leto. That one, I'm staying far away from that. I'm definitely not paying to see that because Jared Leto. But yeah, they got that Morbius movie, but they got all these other Spider-Man related, franchises that they're working on. Obviously, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, with that being such a big success, I mean, they're obviously going to go forward with a sequel to that, and even I heard even spin-offs and stuff like that. And then they're talking about doing what's her name, Cindy Moon, I believe that's the character name. Silk. They're doing the Silk movie, Jackpot, whoever that is. They're doing so many different Spider-Man related spin-off movies that Sony, I feel like they felt that they were at the point where, okay, thanks for guiding us, Kevin Feige, but, we'll take it from here. We got all the Spider-Man stuff, so even when, even when all of this, situation, this stuff going down, I mean, we'll still be good. Or at least that's how I kind of think that Sony was like. But really, this really does bring into question with this reboot coming up, man. What I want them to do with this reboot, because I know there's people, like I said, there's people dreading this. Like some of y'all listening to this is like, oh my god, not another reboot. We gotta see Uncle Ben die again. But I think what they should do, and I think WB is doing this with Batman, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what they should do going forward with this reboot, do what Insomniac did. Just give us a seasoned Spider-Man. And if you're not going to go that route, then at least, don't even worry about the origin story, just like the MCU did. I mean, I hope that they learned, because it seems like maybe they did with Kevin Feige. It seems like maybe they could learn a bit from what Kevin Feige, his direction. Hopefully they learn from this whole situation and their collaboration with Kevin Feige, so that they don't make the mistakes that they made with the Amazing Spider-Man going forward. Now, there's one idea that I know a lot of people want, and that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in live action. Bring Tobey Maguire, bring Tom Holland, and as much as I would hate it, bring Andrew Garfield, but just bring them all back. I don't know if they could legally do that, but just bring them all back. And what they could do, and this is just me spitballing there, with that reboot, go ahead, introduce you a new Spider-Man. Maybe finally introduce Miles Morales. Do what y'all did in the animated movie. Introduce Miles Morales, and then but bring back the older Spider-Man. And then just continue on from there. And just do a Into the Spider-Verse as your reboot. Since, obviously the animated movie was so popular. But yeah, man, this whole situation, like I said, I'm sad about it. I feel indifferent about it, because a part of me's happy, part of me's sad. And, with Spider-Man being such a big property, I mean, this movie, for those of y'all who don't know, the last movie made the most out of any Spider-Man movie. It's the highest grossing Spider-Man movie of all time, and it is to be expected. I mean, they were coming off of Endgame, right? So it was obviously to be expected. But yeah, I applaud Sony for at least, standing up. If what I read was true and everything, if they're not just trying to cover their butts and everything, then, I applaud Sony for at least, standing up to Disney, because Disney's such a big company. Like, I wouldn't be surprised that exec, just left out the room, just like, okay, y'all don't want to play ball? We just go buy y'all. Because, they could buy anybody at this point. I mean, I know that Sony would have to want to be bought, from my understanding. But, I mean, Disney has enough money that they probably could be like, hey, they could be petty and be like, hey, we want to buy y'all. We know y'all struggling in certain, because in some of these Sony movies aren't exactly the best. So, I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much, I think I've said all I can say about the situation. Hopefully, I didn't leave out any of the details and anything. But if I did, tell me in the comment section below. I should have some Spider-Man. I might have some Spider-Man PS4 gameplay in the background. We'll see. I need to get rid of some of that gameplay, some of that old gameplay that I have on my hard drive. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed listening. Let me know what you guys think about Spider-Man leaving the MCU. And I'll see you guys next time. This has been Fear No Hate. I'm out of here. Peace.